When I started creating this video, originally, it started as a guide to getting into collecting for the Master System. I planned on covering the hardware variants, games to get started with, and the various options to play these games. But while writing that script, I realized that I was a step ahead of where I should have started. I began thinking about why I collect Master System games, and why someone else might be interested in collecting as well. This brought me to the idea of talking about what makes this console special. I started collecting several years ago, so I don't have the experience of owning a Sega Master System as a kid. In fact, I only heard about the console in passing when I got my Game Gear during the Christmas of 1991. There was an ad for the adapter to play Master System games on the Game Gear that came with the handheld. It looked mildly interesting, but my attention quickly jumped to the TV tuner attachment on the next panel of the flyer. In college, around 2001, I came face to face with an actual Master System cartridge at a used book, video, and game store. It was Alf, based on the 1980s TV show, and I thought to myself, why would anyone want to play a game like that? Instead, I bought something that interested me more, like Castlevania Bloodlines on the Genesis, and quickly put the Master System out of my mind again. It wouldn't be until about 5 to 6 years ago that I got into the system. I got my hands on a power-based converter for my Genesis, an adapter that plugs into the Genesis to play Master System games, and a couple of Master System games. Those were Transbot and Shinobi. Transbot was alright. I enjoy shooters, but this one was very repetitive with only 2 levels that repeat, so it was all about getting a high score. Shinobi, on the other hand, was great. The game played well, and the graphics were very attractive for that era, and I had a very fun time playing it to completion. I only wish there was an actual ending when you beat the game instead of just a game over screen. Over the years, I've collected an almost complete North American collection, and have many PAL region games as well. Alongside that, an EverDrive for my Genesis allows me to play almost the entire library, as well as choose to play with the FM soundtrack, which was only offered stock on Japanese units. This experience collecting and playing games has given me a good perspective of the hardware and software library, allowing me to form what I think is a good perspective about what makes the system special and unique. These are the things that would possibly attract more collectors and gamers to trying out the system. I'll start out with a little history of the console. After all, the console and games are products of their time and plays an important role in how those games were perceived both then and now. In 1983, Nintendo of Japan released a new video game console known as the Family Computer, or Famicom for short. At the time, the competition was the Atari 2600, Intellivision, ColecoVision, and several 8-bit computers like the Apple II and the Atari 400 and 800 series. This 8-bit console was leaps and bounds ahead of the competition in terms of graphics, sound, as well as user interfaces such as the controllers and light guns. In 1985, Nintendo would bring the Famicom to North America, rebranded as the Nintendo Entertainment System. This would revitalize a mostly dead video game industry due to the crash of 1983. The NES would sell more than 60 million units over its lifetime and absolutely dominated the video game market throughout the 1980s. Several companies would try and compete and fail. Atari released the 7800, NEC would release the PC Engine, which would become the TurboGrafx 16 outside of Japan, and while outselling the Famicom for a few years, it never caught on in North America. Sega would also jump into the fray with a few home systems of their own. Known mostly for making arcade games at the time, Sega really wanted in on the home market as well. Their first attempt was the Japanese exclusive SG-1000 in 1983. This was more comparable to the Intellivision and ColecoVision in graphical capabilities and never truly caught on. A second model variant was produced called the SG-1002, and a computer version including a keyboard was released under the name SC-3000. In late 1985 in Japan and 1986 in North America, Sega released their third attempt, known as the Mark III in Japan, and the Master System in North America. This system was designed to compete directly with the Nintendo Entertainment System. This system features an 8-bit Zilog Z80 with a clock speed which is twice as fast as the NES 2A03 CPU. This does not make the Master System twice as fast, but the overall performance of the Z80 does edge out the NES. The graphic processor was also far ahead of the NES, with the ability to display 32 colors on screen from a palette of 64, compared to the NES with 25 on-screen colors from a palette of 54. Plus, the Master System can display 16 colors per tile, where the NES can only display 4. The only place the Master System was weaker than the NES was in the sound department. The NES Programmable Sound Generator, abbreviated PSG, had more channels with different wave types than the Master System. Japan did get an FM synthesizer that produces sound very similar to what you hear on the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, but unfortunately, that never left Japan. Sega's controller looks very similar to the NES one. You have 2 buttons and an 8-way direction pad. Probably the worst design decision was to place the start button on the console itself, and also placed dangerously close to the reset button. I've had many misfortunes of reaching for the start button to pause the game and accidentally hitting reset by accident. Other peripherals include a light gun known as the Light Phaser. Although it doesn't have the nice click that the Zapper has, the trigger is much better for rapidly shooting, and the accuracy is dead on. There's also a trackball marketed under the name of Sports Pad. Funny enough, you can also use the trackball with Genesis games like Marble Madness. Finally, there were 3D glasses. These are active shutter glasses and work the same way that glasses on modern 3D flat screens work. In fact, the pair that I use are a generic wired active shutter glasses for LCD TVs. Mainly the reason I use aftermarket glasses is that the Sega Master System glasses were designed for smaller children and really don't fit my face very well. Despite all these advantages, Sega barely made a dent in Nintendo's sales. Estimated worldwide sales are around 10 million, with approximately only 1 million sold in the US, versus over 60 million NES units sold. So now that you're a little more familiar with the hardware itself, let's talk about the games. After all, that's what usually distinguishes one gaming system from another. I'm going to cover the strengths of the system and the things that attracted people to choose the Master System over the competition. The first and biggest types of games are the arcade ports. This genre takes up much of the library of the Master System, as well as much of the early Genesis library. Sega really pushed the idea that their consoles were bringing the arcade experience into the home. This worked out really well for Sega, as the Master System ports were much closer to the arcade experience than the NES or Atari systems could muster. Comparing games like Shinobi really show that the Master System was up to the task. The game looks good even though it's nowhere near arcade quality, and blows the NES port out of the water. This wasn't limited to Sega games. It's arguable which version is better, but there's no question that Double Dragon on the Master System is a much more faithful port of the arcade than the NES version. The NES version was single player only, could only put 2 enemies on screen at the same time, and they had to be the same enemy, and your special moves were locked behind an experience system. On the other hand, the Master System was 2 players simultaneously, and you could put more than 2 enemies of any type on the screen. All the arcade moves are available from the start as well. Many of Sega's best arcade experiences were given Master System treatment. Space Harrier, Fantasy Zone 1 and 2 plus The Maze, Wonder Boy in Monsterland, Outrun, and Afterburner are just a few examples. Each time, Sega worked to make sure that they played as close to the arcade original as possible. Even non-Sega arcade games got ports, either reprogrammed by Sega themselves or another developer like Compile. These games include Irem's R-Type, Taito's Rastan, Capcom's Ghouls and Ghosts, and Atari's Paperboy, among many others. Anyone who is a huge fan of arcade games would find many great titles on the Master System, and on top of that, many of these games were only available on the Master System at the time. The second type of game that really sets the Master System apart is its light gun games. The next section has a lot of flickering lights, so anyone with light-sensitive issues should probably skip to the next section. Sega's light gun games are incredibly fun and unique, and play 1,000 times better than the NES. The gameplay and accuracy of the light phaser makes the Master System an excellent choice for this genre. Also, unlike Nintendo, you can plug in 2 light phasers and play 2-player simultaneous in games such as Gangster Town. Games like Rescue Mission is one of the most unique escort mission games I've ever played. You have to shoot obstacles blocking your medics as they traverse the railroad tracks to safety, rescuing troops along the way. All the while, you're blasting at any enemies that are intent on shooting down your medics. Even games like Safari Hunt have a wider variety of things to shoot at, with more stage variety than Duck Hunt on the NES. There's even a 3D shooting game, Missile Defense 3D. The 3D effect is excellent. Shoot down missiles as they fly out of the screen at you before they destroy their targets, thus destroying the world. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to figure out how I could record video for this particular game in 2D mode, as it's not offered on this cartridge. Even arcade games like Rambo 3 find its way to the system. Blast Soviet soldiers across Afghanistan with your machine gun in this horizontally scrolling game similar to Operation Wolf. Finally, there's Sega's unique Master System exclusives. Though there are not quite as many of these as the arcade conversions, they help truly define the Master System experience. Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, is distinctly different from the arcade Wonder Boy 3, Monster Lair, and quite possibly the best game on the system. This game builds on the adventure elements of Monsterland and provides a unique, fun experience filled with tons of exploration and platforming action. Golden Axe Warrior acts as the Legend of Zelda stand-in for the console and does a great job carving out a unique experience from Zelda. It's mostly the same formula, but took what worked in Legend of Zelda and adds more elements. This world seems truly alive with towns and people to speak with, and multiple weapons and magic spells add a lot of variety to your adventure. All of these small touches give you even more reason to care about saving this world from the evil Death Adder. I can't end this video without mentioning the mascots. Alex Kidd in Miracle World was Sega's answer to Super Mario, and it does a decent job of giving the system a mascot character. Alex Kidd would appear in multiple games, but Miracle World is where it all started and is a classic. Late in the system's life, Alex Kidd in Shinobi World was released. This is by far the best Alex Kidd game in my opinion. It's sort of a parody of Shinobi and has perfected the platforming gameplay for this series. Sonic the Hedgehog would also make a late appearance as well. This game is a port of the Game Gear version and distinctly different from the Sega Genesis release of Sonic 1. I like this better than the Genesis version, due mostly to the much better level design. The music was also written by Yuzo Koshiro for this game, the same composer from Revenge of Shinobi, the Streets of Rage series, and ActRaiser on Super Nintendo. Truly a treat to listen to. These 3 groups of games, in my opinion, represents the style of games that really made the Master System unique from other consoles of its time. While it lacked games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Contra, and other well-known series that appeared on the NES, the system carved out its own niche of interesting characters and variety of gameplay styles. I couldn't cover every game or genre in a single video, but this should give you some insight into what to expect if you collect for this system. Sadly, the system never caught on in North America, and today is mostly overlooked by many collectors for more popular consoles like Nintendo's NES. I want to thank you for watching and encourage you to comment on your thoughts about the Master System. If you've enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and click the button for notifications so you don't miss any upcoming content. See you again in the next video.